Hello everyone, welcome back to one of our webinars about the talent screener and the application that you have to fill in order to candidate yourself for one of the EPSO competitions. This time we are talking about the head of delegation, AST4, that it was open right during the summer, but it will be closed in a few weeks' time. So we are right in the moment that you're probably filling in all the different aspects, all the different elements in your application. So we guess that this webinar, it can be of help and assist you with some useful ideas on how to fill it in, get a successful application. So business as usual, we move on now to explain a little bit about this. But first of all, let us present of Croqueta or stagiaire, who is just sending her regards from somewhere around the globe, just visiting some EU delegations and sending some pictures to send you good vibes for this application. So, okay. Once this said, let's see. First of all, why does it matter? Why should I care about filling in this application? Why should I invest any minute providing my input on that? Well, we'll see some few reasons for that. Second, the application, how to fill it in, what are the key elements, and above all, after that, the talent screener. I mean, both are key and both are different. We will see that they are not exactly the same when we are talking about the application. We are talking about or CV or working experience, and when we are talking about the talent screener within the application. These are two different aspects of the same aim, getting a position for the assessment and getting our name on the reserve list. And then how to answer the talent screener, how to solve it. So tricky tasks that we have ahead of us, and let's first of all face the fears. Let's see what are the problems with that the candidates face when dealing with the application, and also allow us to understand why it matters to take seriously the application and dedicate some time to it. First of all, because those most common fears and mistakes will be the ones that will cost us the year, ones that will prevent us from getting farther into the competition. At the end, most of the candidates fail because of this, not because of the exams, not because they didn't study, just because they didn't allow themselves in time enough to prepare their application. Why they don't allow themselves time enough to do so? First of all, because they think that there are too many candidates. So no, there are others who are more valid than me, and my CV is not good. What are my chances? Your chances are good. Your chances are very high if you take it seriously, if you take your time. But if you think the contrary, nobody will convince you, and you won't be there at the end. You think it's too complicated. Well, if we manage more or less in today's webinar to summarize the key points and to make them understandable for you, it means that it's not too complicated. It's just a question of dedicating some effort, some attention, to pay attention to whatever we got in front of us. Procrastination, leaving it for yesterday or for tomorrow, for tomorrow, and then time's up and we didn't. We try to rush in the last few hours to fill in the application. Not a good sign, not a good strategy. So don't procrastinate. From today till the end, to 27th of September, you have to present your application. Dedicate a few minutes every day to filling in the application. It will be successful for sure. And silly mistakes. That's the fourth and the last. I mean, if we are in rush, we are too hurried, we don't pay attention to the key elements, that will be our doom. That will be the thing that will be the worst of all. At the end, because of the very silly mistakes, we fail to get into the reserve list, we fail to get into the assessment, we fail to get through to the next phase. That's one of the most painful things, and it's still happening. For instance, that you are supposed to fill in the application in language number 1 or number 2, depends. The part talents or language number 2, and you made a mistake that you leave some sentences, some paragraphs in another language because you were working in your native language and you decided to translate later, and you forgot to translate those elements, to include those elements in the language required. Then automatically you are out. As silly as this mistake could be, there's been candidates who who went through that situation, or just forgetting some key elements of your working experience. That's a very typical mistake, because we're in a rush and we don't fill in correctly all the elements. So these are things that we need to avoid. So silly mistakes, we need to stop them at all costs. So from our perspective, and based on experience, what we have seen is that at the end, what matters is the following equation. Very simple one, but matters. You take your application seriously. You're as good as your explanation is. These two elements added into a successful application that helps you to get into the assessment center. So please, if you have, imagine 10 years of working professional work experience, don't think that all the candidates with 20 years will do better and will be, they have more chances than you to stay in the final phases. Not at all, because I mean, imagine you have 25 years of working experience, but you get overconfident, you don't explain things correctly, you think that everything is obvious from your perspective because you got a lot of experience. No, it's not obvious. You need to explain. I'm reading your CV. I'm not, I mean, as an evaluator, I not have you in front of me explaining your experience when I read the application. If I put myself in the position in the shoes of an evaluator, I see that they only can read your paper. So that's why you need to take your application seriously, because if your explanation is not good, I mean, where are you planning to go? I mean, it's not clear. They won't spend much time trying to understand. They won't take the phone and say, ring, ring, okay, candidate, tell me, what about your experience? Explain it to me, because on the paper is not very clear. No, they're not going to do that. Never. They will assess only whatever they got in front of you. That's why you need to take your application seriously, and the explanation must be good. Otherwise, it will be quite difficult. Let's move on. What else do we have here? Well, something that we cannot forget. So the perspective, 3 times successful number of candidates sought in this in the assessment will be the one, or after the assessment, will be the ones that they will get there. And for that, they will go through different stages. But the most important, the application and the talent screener, is the same process for all. Don't think that there will be a second path, there will be a different way of getting there. No, all of you go through that same screening, through the same evaluation. So you are at the same level of any other candidate. You are not above or below, you're not having any advantage. So the single advantage is that if you spend more time with your application, you spend yourself better, so you will have advantage compared to the candidates that they didn't do that. As simple as that. But you will say, come on, I mean, cannot be true. I mean, you are joking, it's not true. I don't believe you. Fine, that's perfectly fine. So let me share something that we love here in Yasemos Europeos. Is something, some numbers, some historic perspective on the competition, because the good thing with the competition of head of delegation that in 2018 we got the same competition, exactly the same, with the same number of spots, 40. At that time, those were the numbers. That was the thing. So in 2018 we got 1,359 candidates who present their application to that competition. We will see this year there are more, not very likely, but never know. So, and then after presenting the application, there was a CBT process, the computer-based test. It was done, and then the eligibility screening. So the eligibility means that they fulfill the years of working or the professional or working experience relevant for this position, 6 or 9 years. So after that part, after these 2 elements, only 370 were left. 1 out of 3.5 candidates. You see, the moment when most of the candidates were gone was right before the talent screener, just with the CBT, with the test, and with the eligibility screening. And most of the time it was the eligibility more than the CBT. Calculation is that around 20–25% of the candidates failed in the CBT. So it means that the most of the candidates fell in the eligibility screening, so they didn't satisfy enough years of working experience. So we need to be careful with that. So now in the talent screener, 1 out of 3 will do it into the assessment. Was 118. mathematically speaking, it should be 120, more or less. I mean, EPSO is clear in the notice of competition. They say up to 3 times the number of spots of places offered. There are 40, so multiply by 3, 120. Around that time, that's the limit number. We see that in the reserve list, it was 41. So you can always have a few more spots if there are some candidates that they got at the last market that allowed you the access to the reserve list. They got the same punctuation, so the same markings. So several of them, they got into it. That's why they were 41. But as you can see, the big part where most of the candidates were out of the competition, were expelled, was at the beginning, was in the part of the CVT and the eligibility screening. So please, people, be careful, because the eligibility depends mostly on the information that you put in your application. I don't believe that most of the candidates didn't have the 6 or the 9 years of relevant experience. It was a question that they didn't fill in the application correctly. If we are here today talking to you, it's because we expect you won't suffer the same fate. Because we are here to help you to avoid this happening. So once this is settled, let's move on. Let's see the last element, why it matters to do a good application, and what are your professional expectations in this competition? Because that's something that is clear right from the beginning. I mean, EPSO, in the notice, is right in the first page. They said what duties can expect to perform, indicating that you will be traveling all around the world, you will be working in the EU delegations. So bad news and good news is that you may end working in very exotic places, but the bad news is that very unlikely that you will be working near home, because remember that the single countries that don't have a EU delegation are the member states. In the European member states, there are only communication offices. They are not delegations. They are not European embassies. So that's the limitation. Pity, but well, it's a good opportunity to know countries like Costa Rica, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, China, Chile, or I don't know, South Africa. So many. Well, that's a lovely job. I mean, challenging, but at the same time, it can be quite rewarding, can help you to live experiences that no other professionals could get access to. So let's go for it. Also, please remember that you will need a security clearance, and there are some other criteria associated to this position. So if any Russian spy is listening to me, remember, probably this is not the right position for you, because you will be screened and maybe you will be discovered. So now you can disconnect if you're a Russian spy. If you are not and you're a European citizen, move on. Let's go to the next page. Well, about the exams, because yes. I mean, I mentioned before the CVT, the computer-based test. We mentioned that there's an initial phase that includes the CVT and includes the eligibility check. So let's stop 1 minute to talk about the exams, because that will matter. The CVT, the computer-based test, you see that is the verbal, numerical, and abstract reasoning, language 1. Any one of the 24 languages of the European Union, the one that you have selected as language 1, you select that in your application. That's clear. And you see the criteria. You need in total an overall of 20 points over 40 to pass. You don't need more. I mean, you don't need to get a high score. You don't need anything else. Just you need 20 out of 40 to get into the next phase. So please don't get too nervous. Don't panic. That's your worst enemy. For the rest, it's an easy exam. If by any chance you need help with the CVT, don't hesitate to contact us, and we will see how we can help you. But in the meantime, please, the CVT is an easy one. So now that we know that, the next step that we need to pay attention is the eligibility and the talent. And if you look at the image, you will see that we cross the assessment. Why? Because first, without eligibility and talent, we cannot get into the assessment. So it's not passing the CVT and getting to the assessment. No, it's passing the CVT and getting into the eligibility and the talent. And that's where we are talking today, about these parts. Hope this is clear. Hope everybody got in mind that the assessment was something that far away. Still, until next year, probably spring next year, you will get there. In the meantime, you need to get through the computer-based test, through the eligibility test, and through the talent. Okay, but things that we need to remember before facing the eligibility and the talent. First of all, the OCB is not a talent screener. There will be as two parts in the application. So it's important to bear that in mind. Our curriculum, where we will write and describe our professional experience or education and any other relevant information, is one part, and in the talent screener is another one. Most of the times the information will be repeated, will be the same things that we are talking about. We are writing just fine, but we have to, come on people, copy paste. But don't worry, don't think that, okay, no, but I already replied that part in my CV, so I don't need it in the talent. No, yes, you need, because they are evaluated independently. That's very important to bear that in mind. So second element, based on that, your working experience, you need 6 years of relevant experience or 9 years, depends on your education. You have a post-secondary education, or if you have a secondary education, then you need 9 years. I will stop a little bit more about this later. Remember, I already said that before. I will say it again, and probably I will repeat myself several times before we end today's session, is that explain yourself clearly, explain it clearly, make it sentences clear, something that must be understandable, something that someone that is not you is reading your application. So that reader need to have a clear idea of what you can provide to the institutions, need a clear idea on your work experience. That's key. Last but not least, select your replies. You have time, so please write a first draft. Go to bed, sleep, rest, check the next day again your replies, see what sentences work well, which one don't, and so on several times. The more you sleep your replies, the better will be the results. Because this is a process of continuous digesting, evolution, adaptation, improvement. Usually inspiration doesn't come in one day. You're not writing a novel, you're not writing a poem, you're writing an application. So it requires more the European method, step by step, little by little, not big step, but little by little, you build a great application. But what are the bricks to build our application? What are the elements I am supposed to use in my application? What are the words, the things that I'm supposed to use? Well, you're lucky. You got it in front of you. I bet that you got the notice of competition, and also I bet myself that most of you haven't read it. That's typical. But you see, in the annex 1 of your notice of competition, you have something that is very useful. It's the duties. Yes, annex 1 then give you the duties that allow you to identify the elements that EPSO is looking for in all of you. So when you are describing your professional experience, when you're describing in the talent, the answer requested, don't forget to check on the duties. Don't forget to check on the keywords that appear there and the different elements, the different activities, the different concepts, because those are the ones that you need to identify in your professional experience and describe in your answers in the talent and describe in your working experience. Those are the elements. Please don't talk to me, don't talk in your application about, let's say, that you have built a rocket to reach the moon, because they are not asking the duties to build a rocket to reach the moon. They're asking to manage human resources or to carry the logistic support of the EU delegation, right? With all the problems, the contracting, the services, the security, all these things. If you have done so, be sure that you describe it in your work experience, in your talent, because those are the elements that they're looking for. So don't think about the weird things. No, they will love these activities that are not related at all with the things that appear described in the duties, in the Annex 1. So those are not the things that they are looking for. So please, this is very simple. This is mathematical. This is duties. These are the elements that we're looking for. These are the things that I need to reflect in my application. Something outside of there doesn't look good. It's not positive. It's not reflecting good in your chances to get into the assessment. So please have it clear. There's no secret. It's just work on this. Okay, and also having this in mind is helpful to understand the years of working of experience. Why? Because I said before, if you have a post-secondary education, you need at least 6 years. But if you have a secondary education, you need at least 9 years. In both cases of relevant professional experience, they are asking. What do you mean with relevant professional experience? Exactly what we have seen before. The duties, professional experience where you've been doing these things, when you've been working on these elements that are described here in the duties. So if you cover this task, of course, covering all of them at the same time is difficult unless you've been working as a head of delegation already. But as many as you can introduce them, the better. Remember that imagine that you've been working half-time as head of delegation for a company, and other half of time working as a technician for an IT company that's inventing, then they will count half of the time. I mean, they will say, I've been working 2 years as a 50% head of delegation, 50% IT technician. Okay, then it will count as 1 year, half of these 2 years as the time that you've been working. So in total, with this considering, you will need 6 or 9 years, depending on what are your studies. Probably most of you who are listening to us today are even, you got even a university degree. So that's not a problem. It's above the post-secondary education. So you will need 6 years of relevant experience. In any case, can there be a candidate with only secondary and having his or her chances? Of course, provided the candidate got 9 years of relevant professional experience, that's perfectly fine. No problem at all. Let's move on. Now this is clarified about the years of experience. Let's see what else do we have. An interesting fact that is in the application. When we extract from the application this picture, this caption, we see how they split the professional experience in sub-activities. These activities are in line with the talent and are in line with the duties that you are expected to perform. And then you need to describe in percentage the time that you've been working on these elements. If you go to the annex of the notice of competition, you will see that this is used by EPSO to create a list of candidates, to establish the ranking of the candidates in the way that they are going to assess their professional experience and the talent. Can I be eliminated or disqualified because of this? No. The answer is no. Just for working methodology of EPSO at this moment. So don't worry, but try to be accurate, try to be as much or as precise as you can, because it will help you also to structure all the information and to see what's going on and how your experience matches the needs of the position and what they are looking for. So dedicate some time, check on this element, think about it. It has its relevance, although it's not vital, but it's important to have it clear and to fill it in completely. That was the first element in the application. Remember that you will need to fill in all the slots of professional experience, as many as you need, and in total they should add up to 6 years or 9 years of relevant professional experience. Don't forget that. Check the dates, check the time length twice, thrice, please, because it won't be the first time that the candidate is disqualified because the candidate doesn't meet the amount of time required as a working experience, as relevant professional experience. That will be a pity, especially if you already got it and just a simple mistake introducing the numbers, you don't fill in the criteria. But what else do we have? the talent. We were describing before the CV, the working experience, the years that we need to justify. But now we are moving to the talent. That's the second part. So far, working experience, the years of working experience needed is one part of the application, and it's completely independent of the talent screener that we are going to see now. Please remember, it's completely independent. Don't think that they crisscross the information. They don't check. They don't think about it. They just go from first. They check the eligibility criteria, the years of working experience, and when that is done, they will go to the talent. But maybe it will be other people, or so please don't forget that. But the talent, the questions are public. I mean, you don't need to open your application to see the talent screener. It's already in the Annex 4 of the Notice of Competition. You don't need to go very far. And it's there, point A, the 10 questions from the talent screener. As simple as that one. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I got them already. Yes, you got them already. But, okay, but please, can you tell me something to fill in? I mean, what I'm supposed to write it down? Well, first of all, check on the application form, because it contains a lot of question marks next to the words or to the form, where it helps you. It gives you some indication about the structure of the information, the type of information that they need, and all these elements. So check these elements always, because it contains a lot of useful things. That's the first thing. But the second thing is going question by question and giving some tips, some ideas on what to fill in. But don't forget, remember the duties, remember the Annex 1? We were mentioning it before, it was a few minutes ago, we just discussed it. Keep it present, because again, the wording, the words, the ideas behind the Annex 1 are the elements that we need to reflect in the talent. Again, you will see that the talent and the duties are quite similar. They cover the same ground. I mean, they are looking for heads of delegation. They are not looking for Martians. So, I mean, what's the point of changing the question? There is no point. You keep the same questions. So, let's see the question. Let's see what they're asking and how to answer it. Okay, so now let's go to assess the questions of the talent. We have seen so far the CV. We have been the previous part where we are setting our working experience that will get us through the eligibility checks, that will get us through the 6 or the 9 years of working experience that we need, depends on our education. But now we have the second part that is completely apart. This is the talent screener. And the questions that we got here are the ones that we are facing in the talent. They are coming from, remember, they are coming from the Annex 4 in Notice of Competition. So the 10 questions. But, okay, these questions are fine, good, but how can I reply them? What do I need to get most of the points from it? Besides my accurate experience, but let's assume that all of you got the right experience for this position. So now it's a question of explaining it, making it quite clear in a very structured manner, because the talent is about structure. It's about the explaining the key elements in your application, in your talent screener. What about this first question? So we got the first question, that is professional experience in the supervision of team members in a diplomatic, consular, international, or in non-governmental organizations, so supervision of team members. So here the key is all your experience that you got supervising people. Well, you say, come on, that's obvious, yes, but sometimes we tend to forget. Sometimes we may speak about our working experience in other areas. We talk about our experience in United Nations, European Union, whatever, but we don't disclose about what was the team, what we did with the people, with the team, how we manage the people, what kind of people. Also, if you're working in a private company, imagine that you are working in a delegation of your company in another country. Well, that could fit in, because I mean, you're supervising a team of members, you are doing management of the team, and that's what they are looking for. So those are the elements that you need to explain. And this is related to the second question. setting up a team or an office or managing a considerable organizational change. So plenty of options. Imagine that, well, it's not only in the public sector, but also in the private. Imagine that you are opening an office, a delegation office in the United States. So you describe all the process, how your company open the office there, how you assemble the team, what are the logistical considerations, everything, how you did above all about the people or managing the office, to setting it up, and also could be how you change. Imagine that you have already the delegation established, but you went there to make a major overhaul, to shift from one location to another, to do things that means something relevant change, organizational change, something that is not, oh, I changed the color of the walls. Well, that's not a big change. But I mean, from 5 we went to 50 people, and I was leading that team. I was responsible of broadening, making bigger the team. That's fine. That's good. Those are the things that they are looking for. So those are the things that we need to define. That's why it's important that go to the point, please. Don't explain about the blah blah. No, just be concrete. Give numbers, the size of the team, the location, the characteristics, all these elements. And also, please, I forgot to mention in the first question, but you will see a lot of question marks next to the question that when you click on them, they display the structure, the information that they want to hear, they want to read. So follow it, please. Read it. Be careful, because it's about it. It's what you need. The point 3 is in the execution of an annual administrative budget. What do you mean with that? I mean that I'm capable of spending money. Yes, everybody's capable of spending money, so that's not a big deal. But doing the red tape, the paperwork, the administrative stuff linked to the budget, that's another thing. That can be done on big structures, on big entities, whether they are public or private. So those are the elements that you need to explain how you deal with that, because being head of a delegation, you will have to deal with that, with the budget of the delegation, the money that is spent for the maintenance of the facility, for the salaries of the local staff, for the drinks for the delegation, heating or air conditioning works, whatever. So all that is part of a budget, it's part of an administrative request, part of annual forecast, part of the administrative thing. That's the key part. Whenever you have been involved in the paperwork of preparing a budget, that's the thing that you need to describe. So be certain that you explain correctly, that you use a clear structure, or you use, when you need inspiration, when you are not sure, you use the duties in the vocabulary, or you go to the vocabulary that is available in any web page of the External Action Service, where you can read about the tasks, about the different elements, whether it is the things affected by the budget, or setting the team, or supervising the team of team members. So all these elements count. Be careful, read carefully, write, sleep over, and check again the next day to be sure that your explanation is clear, that everything is to the point, that it's precise. No blah blah, just meaningful sentences with meaningful information. But that's about the first three questions. What about the others? We still have 7 more to go. So, okay, 4th question. In managing real estate, experience in managing real estate, including maintenance works in the building sector. I mean, it's self-explanatory: electric, sanitation, plumbing, housing, office. So all the things that implies to the maintenance of a building, of maintenance of a location, of a place, of venue. Because that will be the things that you will be supervising, the things that you will be monitoring as a head of administration in a delegation. So those are the things. So the more experience you got in something similar, the better. Remember, being in charge of the maintenance of your own house, it doesn't count. It's more about a delegation, an office, a branch of your company, of your entity, of your NGO, all these things, equivalent action and task. It's important. And this is linked to the 5th question. Professional experience in managing logistics, including the organization of the maintenance and repair of the housing equipment. I mean, if in the piece where managing real estate is more the big works, the big things, here is more the small detail, the people, the short certain small elements regarding logistics, whether it's the paper for the delegation, whether it's the bottle of water, or it's getting gas soil to the generators, or getting the people to do that. More the small detail, the small things. Whether in the first one is more the big maintenance works, the big things. They are complementary, so sometimes they can have some overlap. It's not a question of repeating the explanation. It's not a question of repeating itself the working experience, but explaining the approach and explaining the different things related. Okay. Try to follow an order, please. Don't do it randomly, but also follow chronological order from the most relevant experience to the less relevant, provided that they have a timeline. Because if you start to jump in time, it always means the attention. Now, doesn't help the assessor to read through and to understand better and get the overall idea of your working experience. That's why it's important to follow the chronological order. Put all the information, see how they complement. Again, I insist, this is very important because they are excluding the information from the fourth and the fifth, so how they overlap. So we need to be careful, we need to be very precise to draw the lines between the answer on the fourth question and the fifth. And of course, again, go to the point. I mean, no blah, blah, just stick to the good description of the task and the duties that you fulfill in your working experience, especially in line with the duties of this position. But please remember, it's not a question of copy-paste, it's a question of adapting, getting the idea, getting the reflect what they are looking for in what you have done, because maybe you know your activities by different names, you split in a different manner, so it was difficult to establish the links. But if you use the wording, you use the ideas, you will reflect how your experience it's matching, it's linking with what the things that they are looking for. Remember, they haven't gone through your life, the assessors. They don't know you. They don't know you. They just know your application. They just know the paper. So be careful when filling in all these elements to explain them clearly. This is quite tricky because remember, fourth and fifth, they're complementary. They are supposed not to overlap, although some small parts maybe. Okay, that's for the fourth and the fifth. But what else? What else do we have? We got the sixth question: experience in public procurement, handling tender procedures. Yes, all the purchasing procedures in the public administration, but also in the private sector. When the big companies they got some kind of equivalent to tendering, so you can provide this as an experience. Then you have to explain. Again, here they may refer to the previous question, other than refer to the point 5. So it means that, but it's clear that here is more the proceedings at the beginning, the procurement, the scope, the different steps that you have followed, the part where you're responsible of all the tendering process, of all the purchasing process, more than the fact itself of getting the paper, changing the materials, or getting the elements fixed in the building. It's more about the previous part, hiring the services, contracting the supplies, or doing all these elements that are linked with the needs of any delegation and with the needs of any public administration. So you need to show that you know how to handle them. Even if you haven't been working on the private on the public sector, still from the private it's still possible to explain. So and what about the question number 7? Professional experience in representation negotiation with landlords, providers, local authorities, staff. So here it's not a question that, okay, I was speaking in front of the United Nations General Assembly. Oh, wonderful. That's excellent, but that's for diplomats. That's not for head of administration. So what's going on? So because here they want to know that you got experience to talk to the traditional stakeholders of your work. The things that you have done are in line with this element, that you've been cooperating, collaborating, negotiating, representing in your future tasks, representing the delegation in front of this kind of stakeholders. The more experience you got on this, the better. But remember to explain who they are. I mean, don't say, oh, I got experience representing. With whom? What? When? How? About what? All these elements are needed. Okay? So this is important. Explain to whom you've been talking. Explain in front of what people you represented, the entity, whatever entity you were representing. And the 8th question, professional experience in working in a security-sensitive environment. So, as we like to say, if you're a Russian spy and you are listening to us, bad luck, you will go through screening, you will go through different elements, so it will be a nasty thing. So don't try to candidate yourself, but it counts as an experience because you have gone through a security-sensitive environment. So that's the little bit of the paragraphs. Well, jokes aside, the thing is that the more experience you got on this, the better, because you need to follow some rules, you need to follow some principles, and above all, you need to explain the overall, but above level. And I've been working in NATO, and I got the security clearance. Fine. But don't say, oh, I got security clearance, so I got access to the secret weapons of NATO for the next 30 years. So hope it's clear that you don't need to give sensitive details within. It's only the overall, the kind of classification, the level of sensitivity of the clearance that you got on this part. But be sure that you specify these elements, the institution, the type of exam that you went through, all these elements. That's for the 8th question. So, what about the last 2 questions? We got the 9th and the 10th. So let's go through it. So, well, the 9th is quite easy. So, specific training attested by the diploma or certificate. If you got the diploma, you got the certificate, just state that. Which diploma, what certificate, either you have it or not. Don't worry if you don't have them. You may get points, but probably in question 9 and 10 are not the most valuable ones. You will get more points by the others. Usually, remember that EPSO applies an average, a weight to all the questions. You can get between 1 and 4, and this is multiplied by a factor of between 1 and 3. That's the weight they give to the question. So probably there will be a weight 1, while the previous ones were more closer to 2 or 3 as a multiplicative factor. So, but well, it's easy. You get it, explain correctly what's kind of diploma, year, institution, whatever, all the details that any professional would need to explain in order to prove that you got it. And remember, you will need to provide a copy later on when you submit all your documents. Last but not least, the question of the languages. So this is a tricky one, because if you are, for instance, Spanish speaker or Italian speaker, but you can also speak English and French, you can play with these elements, which you can play with this, because you remember the language too must be English or French. But imagine that you speak perfectly well English, you speak perfectly well French, and you speak perfectly Italian and Spanish. Let's say these 4 languages. So you could declare as language 1 Italian, you could declare as language 2 English, for instance, and then you can present French and Spanish as extra languages knowledge for this part. If you're native, usually, well, instead of a certificate, you need to provide a proof of nationality. But you can play with these elements to get a few more points. You never know. The more points you can get, the better. So this is important. So play with these options. See if the CVT and the parts that you will do in language 1, you can do it in a different language that is not one of these 5 languages as tested there: English, French, Portuguese, Spanish, Russian, Arabic, and Chinese. There are more than 5, sorry. There are in total 5, 6, 7, 8 languages. So that's the point. If you can speak any one of them, and as particular Spanish and Portuguese, that are among the 24th official languages, and they are not language too. So play with that to see what's the composition that allow you to get more points with certain guarantees that you can pass the initial phases of this competition. This is another way of getting extra marks. You never know. Still, as we have seen at the beginning, the important part, it's here, it's the part of the eligibility, but then the talent. Because most of the candidates, 1 out of 10 mostly at the end, are eliminated between the eligibility, the talent, and the CVT. Only 1 out of 10 will get into the assessment. So that's why all the points count. We can take advantage of these elements. And also don't forget that some of the information can be repeated, especially for diploma and the certificates. That maybe you introduce that concept of that input in a previous answer. No problem, don't worry. All the information that is relevant, you just put it for each question. Treat this question like models, like silos in that perspective, that if you need to repeat. Always remember that they are the question 5 and 6, they indicate that don't repeat information from the previous answer. All these things considered, take always a good look once we have done the talent, filling it, to check that all information match, that all information is there and clear. Sleep it over, work on it, and the next day work again. Dedicate several days to look with fresh eyes every day your answers, and you will see and you will spot new mistakes, new things that can be improved, things that can be promote inside your work experience to make it more clear how you're feeling the profile given in this competition. Okay, so now let's move on to the next thing. And yes, of course, don't forget to check AST, especially for the professional experience, because there's where it's defined the criteria to count the professional experience, like how it will be considered as official work, that it needs to be remunerated, in case it was a traineeship, it was you went through a maternity leave, PhD, part-time work. All these elements are described in the Annex 2. So don't forget to check if you have doubts or you have any question. So just for the sake of recapitulation, so professional experience and conclusions. The fact that you cannot mention things that are not accredited, things that are not real professional experience. So despite that you've been working with your friends, that it was an informal job, you cannot put it. You need to put always facts, not opinions. Don't say that you're a very good worker. Say that you've been dealing teams of X sites, you've been working for X institution for Y years, whatever, but always facts, not opinions. Being good, being smart, being a great worker, those all are opinions. Be smart in the sense that we play with information in our favor. We always talk about the things that allow us to look good. I mean, something doesn't allow us to look good, nobody says it tells you to lie, but I mean, you just put the information that is good for you. Sleep your replies. I said before, I always advise to sleep a lot because it's always useful to be rest and with energy. And also time to see who is a good friend. When we say that, is the fact that getting help from others is always a good thing, in the sense that with other candidates. I mean, if you have fellow candidates in this competition, change with them. Okay, I give you my application, you give me yours, so I check it, I read it. But it's not clear, I asked you, and I show you, okay, this sentence makes no sense. This working experience is not fully clear. So when fresh eyes look at your application, it's always good because they will detect things that you haven't detected. They won't give for granted certain information that you may give it. So that's why you need to see who is a good friend, who can help you reading your application, checking all the information that you have provided in your application. Okay, that's one thing. But what else do we have? Well, I always like to use this quote from Albert Einstein, that is, genius is making complex ideas simple, not making simple ideas complex. And that works well for your working experience, for your professional experience. I mean, adding a long paragraph that is completely nonsense, that is very difficult to read, doesn't help. While just the contrary, a complex working experience, if we manage to spend in 2 or 3 sentences, extracting the knack of it, because we don't have enough space and time to describe all the minor details. We just got what we got in the application. There's a limit of the number of words and characters that we can introduce. There is time limitation that we got to explain ourselves, whether it's in the application or later on the test. So keep it simple. Make great ideas in simple format, not the contrary. Complexity in the explanation is always a burden. It's not an advantage. That's just the main tip, but can we provide other tips to you? Can we say other things? Yeah, sure. Well, few classic tips, but still quite useful based on our experience, because we have seen that candidates insist on repeating some of these mistakes. First of all, don't write too long sentences. Average sentence length is 15-20 words. We are using English as a reference. Depends on the language, but I mean, don't go beyond those numbers. Maximum length 25 words whenever possible. So please, especially myself as a Spanish native speaker, well, we have tendency to create very long sentences with a lot of connecting clauses into the main sentence. It doesn't work like that. Keep it short and simple. Better several short sentences than a very long one with a lot of conditions and different elements. Short and simple. And that goes with type 2. One idea, one sentence. Don't try to put many ideas in one sentence, or many sentences without any idea. That works both ways. Always one idea, one sentence, or one paragraph, or one small paragraph, one idea. Be effective in your communication. Then bullet points is also a nice way of showing certain informations. Avoid the big block of text. They don't help. And when we're saying bullet points for list of specific items, for ideas, but something that makes sense. I mean, if you try to create a list with bullet points that is one single word, without you being there to explain what's the meaning of these words, maybe it doesn't make sense. So careful with using the bullet points in a wise manner, just to make it clear the structure of the text that you have right. Another classic thing is don't bury the key information in the middle of a text or a paragraph. Always the key idea must be at the beginning or at the end, especially if it's a paragraph of 3-4 lines or even longer. Key ideas always at the beginning or at the end, but never in the center. Because when you're tired, imagine the evaluator is tired, has been reading a lot of applications, and suddenly comes to your text that is a lot of long paragraphs, and the key ideas are buried in the middle. But it's human reaction. They will skip the center, they will read the beginning and the end, and they will move on. So they are skipping the key information, the big elements, the real elements. So careful with that. But what else? Do we have more tips? Yes, we have a few more. Please don't use jargon. If you need to explain it, I mean, if you're coming from any environment, imagine that you've been working in the United Nations, in delegation of the United Nations, and you have used your own jargon, your own words. Don't use them. Use clear standard English, French, or any other language that you're using to fill in your application, but please don't use jargon. Now, because also another thing, it's always different. Even in the institutions, in the European institutions, you see that the jargon that you're using one DG, Direction General, is different than from another DG. So, it's a perfect recipe for disaster if you're using jargon. Instead of looking cool, you look awful. In case of doubt, but in general, check if your replies are understandable. Check if anyone can help you to verify that your contributions are good. That anyone can read them easily. Careful with the false friends, especially for some languages with others. Sometimes what you think means one word is not the same in reality, or is not the real meaning. So careful with that. And that's not least, use available resources. If you have doubts about a certain description, task, or where you got the duty, you got the notice of competition to check for the wording, and if not, just go to the internet. The European institutions, especially the External Action Service, they got plenty of information on the internet, so you can check the different tasks, the words, the policies, the actions, so you can get inspiration to get the right wording, to get the right elements on your application. It's always helpful for that. Okay, so there's plenty of them. There's not secret resources. There's only with the browser, the document that you got at hand. You got more than enough resources and inspiration sources to fill in your application. So don't need to go beyond there. Don't need to look for strange things to find the solution to the wording and to the element that you need in your application. And also, please don't forget that the more you practice, the more you spend on drafting and redrafting and checking, the better it will be. It's through that real practice that one gets better and your application gets better. There's no shortcuts. There's no strange recipes that allow you to get the perfect application in no time and no effort. It doesn't exist. Only through work, through constants, you get it. Hope this is clear. Hope this has been helpful to all of you, and you will use it for your application in the coming days. But what else can we do for you? Hoping that, as I said, this has been useful to all of you. Now let us talk about yasemoseuropeos a little bit and tell you what we can do for you. So first of all, we can offer you free webinars and materials as the one that you are watching today here. CBT trainings, we organize this training in Spanish every month, more or less, in English once in a while, so contact us for further information. Training for the assessment center sessions. So in your case, it will come in spring next year. So don't forget that we are here to help on that part. But if you're in any other competition, just contact us. We got plenty of help for that. Application review, if need be. We can also help you with that. CAS sessions. Also, if you're looking for a contractual position, if you're looking for something that is not an officer of the European institutions, we can help you as well to prepare the interviews, applications, and the different elements. And of course, last but not least, don't forget that you can follow us in our different social media. Telegram channel, where we got multiple information about vacancies, about trainings, about any other useful information for the candidates, English and Spanish, and social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. So don't forget to subscribe and click on like to get as much information as possible from all of different sources. So, and last but not least, remember that only your work matters. You will need to dedicate some time to get a successful application, but at the end, it pays off. The more time you dedicate, the more intelligent, smart effort you do with your application, the better will be the results. And at the end, what we want is to see you just like this, like your croqueta, just enjoying life, being the head of delegation in some paradisiac islands around the globe. So good luck, everyone. We stay in touch and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.